I recommend transcendental meditation as a direction. And I'll first tell you why and then how I got into it after a fashion. So I do a morning meditation by the channel Lazarus because it's the most kind of exciting, alive, kind of dynamic, positive energy that I've come across. And so it's a series of, the original morning meditation is a series of 4 different meditations. You repeat 3 of them twice, and then you do the 4th on Sunday. So anyway, it's a terrific meditation. However, I have found that since developing PTSD, and after a while of doing those meditations, my mind tunes the meditation out about 90% and instead focuses on ruminations that negate the meditation effect. And so that's a guided meditation where, it's easy to, go off on a different train of thought and lose track. So as a result of that, maybe, 80% of the potential impact of the meditation is reduced. So that is a crack, meaning I've enjoyed guided meditations much of my life, but it seems that while having PTSD, anything that I do too often, the ruminations around PTSD slowly consume what is familiar. And so for a regular protocol, it's not as effective. So that's kind of how I got to a point of realizing I'd like to find a way past that. Now, there's a book called The Presence Process, which, while filled with a lot of nonsense, does have a good meditation protocol. However, it's too much. Some part of me is not willing to let go into all of that breathing. And so it becomes an inner battle, right? The part of me that's breathing, the part of me that is frightened. And I suspect this has to do with the fact that PTSD was caused as a result of therapeutic abuse under the influence of my first psychedelic experience, right? And so, that's an experience of transcendence and opening, followed by and concurrent with and preceded by large amounts of therapeutic incompetence and abuse. So it ended up triggering childhood abuse memories, body mechanisms, terror, etc. And as a result, I think that I have a strong set of what in IFS, or internal family systems paradigm, would be called protectors and outcasts. Because the parts that came up were banished and blocked to protect my therapist's fears, as opposed to integrated. And so, my greatest moment of transcendence in my life, my first psychedelic experience, was pushed past my protectors due to, fears and other protectors on my part, right? And then were shut down again by the therapist due to his fears and insecurities. So it was a profoundly botched kind of entrance into transcendent territory, meaning it was neither safe nor sane nor, ethical. And the largest pain of my life, has emerged in response, right, to all of that, and just being in the unknown of that. So there is definitely a part or a series of parts within me that does not want to venture into transcendent territory and repeat all of those mistakes. And I'm not deep enough into the IFS paradigm to have calmed and understood those various protectors. So I think, in short, that there is a part of me that is kind of committed to avoiding anything that is transcendent for fear of a repeat fiasco. However, right, without anything transcendent, the hell of PTSD is so intense that there are other parts that want to die, right? And so there's kind of a negotiation between, right, being stuck into the hell of PTSD without anything beyond, without anything transcendent, and the terror of going into those wide open places without structure, without boundaries. And so there's a dilemma, right? There's a duality, there's a crisis of sorts. Now, I heard about, and probably several of my mentors are interested in doing transcendental meditation, most notably Ray Dalio. So Ray credits most of his success in life with his practice of meditating twice a day using transcendental meditation. So that's what and he's accomplished an enormous amount. And I admire him as a designer. So but then there's Jerry Seinfeld and a number of other people that are also talking about this. So that's encouraging. And so anyway, I read a book on transcendental meditation. It seems like, it's a good practice. And because it uses a mantra, it is a mantra that I need to initiate, meaning it's not listening to a mantra. If it was listening to a mantra, I would soon tune it out. But I think the thought is that, or the function is that if I have to generate the mantra, I can't think about other thoughts while I'm generating the mantra. So I can pause the mantra and generate other thoughts, but I can't fully think the mantra and think other thoughts. And in that sense, it is a respite or a rest from, other thoughts, which in PTSD tend to be circular thoughts of a dread-based nature, a horrific-based nature. So that's the idea. And the other, part of that is sleep is a transcendence of consciousness. And so there's a certain part of me that is afraid of sleep, right, as another expression of transcendence that will rev up as I'm starting to fall asleep. And so so a number of things have come together at one time. The morning meditation is only 10% effective rather than 100% effective. I'm feeling anxious, and there's nothing clear that needs doing, right? I have time. I have the time that I was currently spending watching more than I think is ideal of television, because I watch it to a point that is numbing. Now, when I say television, I mean Netflix media that I'm interested in, but nonetheless, there's a certain part of it that I'm just doing this to avoid feeling something. So there's a compulsive element. And of course, meditation and awareness is an answer to that. It's the opposite. And so in that kind of confluence of things, reading a book, etc., it seemed like it would be better for my health to spend 40 minutes, 2 20-minute segments doing TM and cut back on media consumption by 40 minutes. So that's all the theory. Now then comes the Maharishi kind of quest, right? Having experienced enough hypocrisy, betrayal, trauma, etc., around teachers or leaders, and having a high level of disgust around that as a result of the Peter Sandhill Human Awareness Institute, cover up and stuff of the spiritual and sexual and therapeutic abuse. That's it's just, that's, I don't want to get into that again. So I watched a few videos, and yes, Maharishi is deceptive. Maharishi is well, not any great role model, shall we say. However, I'm deceptive. I'm not a great role model, right? And so, listening to another therapist's, comments about this, she said that there are no great teachers, great men, etc. Whether it's Gandhi, it doesn't matter, right? There are certain people that are willing to achieve extraordinary results in some area. And they're not perfect. They're not saints. They're not immune to, the sociopathic elements of the human animal. They're people who have been willing, flawed people, incomplete people, confused people who have been able and willing to make a great contribution in a certain area. And to bring transcendental meditation to the West and have perhaps millions of people meditating as a result is a great accomplishment, right? So, enough about Maharishi. And the only question is it, does it work? Now, they've gone to extraordinary lengths to praise the protocol without actually, giving you the recipe. And having a dubious relationship, and some strong antagonism towards the therapeutic profession after, so much incompetence, so much stupidity, so much blindness, so much cruelty in that body of, in that field. It's, I want to know who I'm dealing with. So we get into then the politics and I think somewhat absurdity at the transcendental meditation schools of they don't let you pick your teacher, right? So there is a teacher, apparently a few miles away. But all I know is his name. I don't know how long he's been practicing. I don't have a sense of his face. I don't want to sign up for $800 for someone I can't read anything about. This is poor protocol in my view. And it's asking me to do something unknown in an unknown location with an unknown person for a relatively high price tag. So, I feel hostility around that whole setup. Because the last thing you want to deal with PTSD is more being out of control and more unknown. So, the asshole can't bother to respond to an email, right? So anyway, that's on some level, right? And this is a part talking, but on some level, it's like you got to hand it to the fuckers, right? It's like let's try and get you over here, get you over there, do this, that, and if we can't do that, let's do here, and then let's just pretend this is a wonderful offering, right? It's pitfalls and uncertain flooring and trap doors that open suddenly. It's a nightmare. Right. And so, that's a part talking, and I can certainly empathize with and understand that part. But there's also, the fact that this has been a great protocol, and you can actually piece together a lot of it from online, right? The teacher gives you a mantra. The mantra does not mean anything, so you don't get caught up in meaning. And then you repeat the mantra for 20 minutes, and the teacher helps you in the first day or so to, make sure that you're doing it right, which is probably a lot of reassurance and just the ability to talk with someone and provide some safety, right? But then the teacher in this case has insisted on remaining anonymous, so they're already being unsafe by doing that, right? And so, so anyway, it seems like a worthwhile thing to do alone, right? One might not get all of the value. On the other hand, one might, when one does something differently, one might get more value, right? Everything that is a status quo is somewhat frozen in time, and there are always going to be better protocols that evolve over time. And there's, of course, many worse protocols, right? So anyway, I sat down, I did, and I picked a meaningless, like I think it was Bhaktu. I picked a mantra that means nothing, that, intuitively came into mind. And I began, doing that for about 5 minutes, but it didn't quite feel, uplifting. And so I switched it to being. And being is medicinal because it's what I want to focus on. It's also transcendent. To be is to transcend thought. But it also, it has very little politics and charge either way. Being, it's almost impossible to describe. And so it does serve some of that ineffable, not get hung up on the meaning of it type of, it serves that purpose. And so I felt better chanting with or thinking the thought being. Now, so that became my mantra for 20 minutes a day. Now, the first time I did it, I felt great. But as I mentioned, I have protector parts that are uncomfortable with transcendent territory. And so they start piling on to stop this form of transcendence. So they can do that by flashing images that capture my attention. That's one. And then I start to debate, the conversation or something around the images that capture my attention, i.e. things that I'm attached to. And I think meditation is a great way of understanding the things that we're attached to, right? Because if an image comes up that we're not attached to emotionally, well, we just let it go, right? It's no big deal. But what tends to happen is I get flooded with images that I think, I should do that immediately. I should write that down before I forget it. That's important, that's important, that's important, that's important, that's important, that's important, right? So, and then I start thinking, well, there's all these important ideas that I'm not writing down and acting on. This is a bad thing, this meditation, right? I mean, I could have done this. And of course, even if you wanted to look at it as a productivity stunt, it's a terrific thing, right? If you're going to have all your important thoughts the moment you want to not think, then you should not think regularly so that you can have your most important thoughts, right? And I have done that in the past, and that has successfully eroded the meditation culture, meaning when I was doing the presence process, I would again, the breathing version of this, I would again, because to transcend, you just focus on a routine that has little or no meaning. So you can focus on the breath. If you just do nothing but breathe and focus on the breath, you will have a transcendent experience. But you can also focus on the mantra, and if you will do nothing but focus on the mantra, you will have transcendent experience. You could probably do an arm thing, and if you would focus on nothing but your arms moving, all we're doing to transcend is having a repetitive single focus of something, out of which a state of transcendent being starts to emerge as the awareness that is beneath all the variety that keeps certain parts of the brain active. Right, so I did this before where I would sit down and do the presence process, and then I would have a brilliant idea immediately. And so I would go and do the idea and then come back and then go do that. And eventually that was such a good defense of transcendent thing that all I would have to do is sit down, I would have a good idea, and then off I would go, and then I would forget to meditate. I guess that somewhat subverts the thing because, just the idea of a brilliant idea, like I ought to be doing that, well, the I, the ego, can believe in that more than I should have a transcendent experience, right? But then you just start, well, what's the brilliant idea, right? And then they don't come as much. So it's a little bit paradoxical in that sense. If you want to have a brilliant idea, do transcendent meditation of some kind, but there's also horrific ideas, embarrassing moments, anything that that might be able to divert. But I also think there's a sense that the ego has decided to control and shut down certain things. And certain parts of the I have said, like, that's not transcendent. That's not of God, Goddess, all that is. That's not a beautiful thing, and that's part of you. And so you're not beautiful. You're not part of God and Goddess and all that is. I mean, and so I think that some element of, like, if we're opening up to the part of us that is more, that's what transcending means, then there's going to be all the parts in us that said, okay, that's not more, that's less, that's bad, that come up to see, are we willing to go through that barrier of our own judgment to that transcendent state? Now, and this is, I think, a psychological construct that we've constructed, that I've constructed a barrier of things that I feel ashamed of or like I don't want to be seen around. So that's an attachment. I don't want that to be seen. Well, then, when you transcend, you let go of all that, including the agenda that it isn't seen, right? And so you have to transcend your own judgment about what is and isn't okay in order to enter the state of transcendence where it's all okay, meaning you're allowing it all. I've got to hide this and control. That's not transcendence, right? That's ego, manipulation, domination, judgment, etc. And that's why it's depressing, right? That's why it's shameful, miserable, terrifying, right? It's the belief in the ego construct. But so both things happen on the journey towards a transcendent state, which is every single image or thought or memory that seems taboo in some way. I'm going to get in trouble if this is there. That starts to surface, right, and be aware of. And there are detour points. Like if I get lost on any one of those images and thoughts, then the transcendent process stops and the meditation stops. And I'm busily trying to say, well, what is the solution? Was that embarrassing? This? Well, that's not the mantra. That's not the meditation, right? And so that's, going off on side roads all the time. So that happens. The negative version of distraction, so to speak, would be the worst, most compelling, most puzzling, most confusing images of a lifetime, right? Then on the other hand, there's all these brilliant ideas. Wouldn't you like to go and write, there's this chap, write that down right now, right? And before you're going to forget that, right? You've already forgotten it, right? Oh gosh, I'm forgetting all these good ideas, right? And so those are also there, right? Like, I can't just transcend. I've got to write that chapter down. It's important, right? So anything that we could get attached to, what do we get attached to? We're not that attached to the mediocre boredom of our lives. We're attached to our worst fears. Can't have that happen. We're attached to, I've got that I want to be a brilliant person. We're attached to that happen. So those are the attachments, and they're on both sides. But of course, they wouldn't be there to begin with if we weren't at least attempting to meditate, which is saying that the meditation is more important than either of those things. So it's carrying on with the mantra. And there's a sense of self, which is, always, the most divine experience is a sense of self, and with it, ego-less presence, right? The sense of self, of beauty, it's beyond words, right? But it's a wonderful experience. And even with the chattering, and there's like, there you are, self, right? A few moments here and there. And then it's off onto the side. There you are again, right? Just come back to the mantra, back to the mantra. So I am piling on with, since that is working very well, I'm fidgeting. That's one thing I want to do. I'm fidgeting. The protectors that are trying to get me to, avoid too many transcendent moments they're fidgeting. They're waiting towards different times. They're cringing. They're like, don't let me have a peak experience. I don't want it. They're doing some control dynamics, like with my dog. Like I'll feel anxious, and it's like, I have to get my dog in order to meditate. And then I can be mildly distracted, by my dog. And so there's definitely some vulnerability in this territory. and I feel compassion for the, it's kind of a wordless, it's just a lot. It's a lot that's there. So that was a good integrating moment. I'm not sure what happened, right? But that is the kind of thing that does happen in transcendental meditation, and it felt significant, difficult to put into words, and overall calming and integrating. It seemed like a part of me that was afraid of showing up and being aware of showed up, seemed a bit overwhelmed. I seemed a bit overwhelmed with it, so it was just a matter of being present. And then it seemed like it settled into my body, and and there's a sense of wanting to rest a bit after that. So that's what I'll do. Anyway, I am doing my own, self-initiated form of transcendent meditation, which is my mantra, 20 minutes a day. And I think it's a rich, it's a rich territory for the little time it takes. It's a very rich territory into witnessing resistance, getting some great ideas, and doing something that's calming and at times ecstatic.